Mitchell, did you want to say hi to the folks back home?
Yes. I thought I did. Hi again.
Great. So the current situation in Nanjing, there's some things called residential checks. So also restaurants and most businesses are closed, and schools may not open until March 2nd, or maybe later, which is a bit frustrating.
Not maybe, more likely later.
It's, recently there's been officially no new cases in the Nanjing area, and there's more and more people trying to do online classes and work online. Would you agree with the summary, Mitchell?
Yeah, I would also say that, all the
what?
All the factories are still closed. All the workplaces, not just commercial and retail.
And since most people in China work in manufacturing, it's a big deal when the factories are closed. So I just wanted to point, here's the big intersection near my street. They have put this red banner over here and closed off this nice walking street, which has restaurants up and down on the left side and the right side. The fruit shop is open, and that's about it. Everything, all of the small restaurants, little bakery, little other things are done. And yet, it's arbitrary. On this left side here, also next to my area, they have a stationary school supply store that's open. The schools aren't open, but the school supply shop is open. And you can see they've also closed down different small streets around. So there's only one way into the general residential area, one way out. It's frustrating. And so even if these shops open up, the people will be restricted into getting to those areas, and so they will be hard for them. And to get into the areas, you have what you can see over here on the right side. It says a little pass that says, you are authorized to go into this area. We know that you have a hukou or a rental agreement here, and go to it. Anyway, they're very annoying.
Yeah. Here's the same one I was given too.
I think the stamp is slightly different, as well as maybe the characters at the top. But they say, according to the...
I was amazed how quickly they could get these printed and distributed. That was fast.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe they've used them before for other things, so strange. Positive signs and
that's what that's what I want.
Virus. Daily infections in the mainland has plummeted, and a lot of areas like Nanjing hasn't had any in the last few days. But this is new daily infections, so there's still quite a lot of infections in Hubei and a few other places, but in our area it's not the case, which is good.
Yeah.
Let's see. This is the one that you pointed out. Do you want to explain it, Mitchell?
It just basically shows that the most vulnerable are the elderly, and the graph is what you would normally expect from a typical flu season. The older a person is, the more likely they are to die from complications from this virus. So it's behaving very much like a flu virus, just with faster transmission. Even that. I mean, this in a sense, this maybe normalizes. Maybe that's why these numbers are out like that. It kind of normalizes the effect of this virus, but it might also obscure the fatality because it's hidden by percentages.
Yeah. Well, Good, I'm not 80 plus. You know. Hey.
But it's again, this is as of February 11th, and you know, it's what, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, something like that.
Things are changing fast.
Okay. So that's work, online classes. It's a Sunday, and yet we still have classes. Wonderful. Alrighty, I'll call them back later. Okay, where are we? We're going to. They have mentioned there's some manufacturing ones that have opened up again, but these are Beijing, Liaoning. These are provinces that are relatively farther away from Hubei, in the northeast, and
Right.
so we'll see. And
also high-end export market items too, it looks like.
yeah, there's another one for ambulances and airplanes. So if they're not producing, they're losing a lot of money. So I can see why
they're making lots of masks too. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Also, abroad news is different countries have reacted to the COVID virus differently. In some places like Ukraine and Korea, it's been very harsh. In other places like Cambodia, it's been a little less serious.
Yeah.
So what happened in Ukraine is they had some evacuated Ukrainians and a few other Eastern European countries' citizens flown out of Wuhan and sent to Ukraine, and then on the road from the airport to the main hospital where they're going to be quarantined, the villagers set up roadblocks and set fires, throwing bricks at the buses and the hospitals and the convoy that was trying to bring the people. And these are Ukrainian citizens, so it seems pretty crazy. The health minister, though, said he's going to spend time with the patients at the same hospital and the patients in the same conditions, just to show that they're human and the conditions are fine. Also, these patients, I'm pretty sure, were tested 14 days ago, or just before they got on the plane, during the plane, when they got off, just to make sure. None of the times did they have any symptoms for the coronavirus. Also, wanted to talk about North Korea. Mitchell, do you want to explain what happened to the guy who avoided quarantine? What happened to him?
Yeah, I just think it's a great example of how efficient authoritarian governments can be. When they see a problem, they go after the source of the problem and they execute it. So, it's
including people.
You don't even have to have the virus, and that's it's. I think it's another fine example of when your main tool of exerting your political will is a hammer. Every problem is a nail, and
didn't he execute uncle
family members
with a
girl and a girlfriend? Yep. Again, efficiency. Everyone loves efficiency. No need for a trial. Just go right to the.
Whereas Cambodia is on the other side. They say, what problem? We have 23 Cambodian students in Wuhan. They don't need to evacuate. They can stay there. It's not that bad. And I'll go visit. I'll show you how it's good. Cambodia is a small country that depends a lot on Chinese investments and trade and tourism. They also export 400,000 tons of rice to China every year. So if there's issues in foreign relations with China, it has a huge impact in Cambodia. So, it's it's one of the friends of China in the region, and they want to stay that way.
Yeah, friend. They do what they're told.
I think China would understand, but you know, if that's where your bread and butter is coming from, you know, better treat them well, don't you think?
Let's face it, they're just students. Come on, they're just students. And more when those came from.
So one of the big things that's come up is online classes. The government said, we're closing the schools, but education is still important. Everyone should start taking online classes. And people are being thrown into the deep end with this. I'm working for a training center, and we also went from purely in-person live classes to online classes, both live online classes and also recorded in advance, and some other types of formats, which is strange. So Sixth Tone had a nice article about this, talking about some of the professors, especially universities, have been using it, but there's been big issues that some places don't have good connections. And so actually getting the classes is difficult for them. You have things where the professor's getting on the roof of their house to give lectures or other things. You know, some of the times the classrooms of 60 people and then also the platforms have had 10 times more people trying to access them than usual, and some of them have crashed because of so many people trying to use these online platforms.
Sure.
For education, like little young kids' education is also a small issue. The parents often want to minimize how much screen time they give the kids. But now the government's saying you need to give online education. So that's frustrating. On top of it, the kids often get distracted. And so the parents feel they have to sit next to them and say, pay attention, or no candy for you. But on the teacher side, sometimes actually discipline is a bit easier, because if the kids are misbehaving or something, you can mute them easily. So, whereas if you're in an in-person class and the kids are starting to go crazy, it's usually like the liaison teacher takes them to the side and pulls them out of the class and stuff like that, but it still is disruptive. What's your opinion about online classes, Mitchell?
Well, just to follow up what you said before about how parents are taught that they should limit their children's access to the internet. And even the schools often downplay the educational benefit of the internet. So even university students were telling me that they didn't use the internet themselves to learn anything. It's not really, even at this date, I think, for the majority of Chinese schools, they don't see the internet as a teaching tool. Mm-hmm. And so they've suddenly been forced to, gear up and adapt. And like you said, some of it is just, infrastructure limitations, as well as, websites that just aren't equipped to deal with a huge demand all at once.
Yeah.
So this is, again, kind of showing some of the weaknesses of the Chinese internet in particular, but also the rigidity of the Chinese pedagogy. And it's just not willing to see the internet as a tool to teach with until they're forced to.
Yeah.
But I can also tell you that my cooking classes are indefinitely postponed.
Cooking class is something hard to go on it.
It's kind of hard to teach cooking online with students who want to touch the ingredients and stuff. So,
although I have seen some interesting TikTok videos about, I think there was a class of 60, like 6-year-olds doing burpees, all with little cameras, so they're going up and down. So they're having a gym class online with 60 kids. All right, next slide. Let's go to the next slide. What do we got here? So one of the things was who are actually benefiting from this? We've seen all these businesses close down and other stuff. And there's an interesting article from Walk the Chat that talks about some of the winners. There's big online portals, delivery companies, and online fitness companies. So for gaming, games.
Go back.
Oh, okay.
That's a winner. I've also heard plenty of stories, though, that the big sellers like Taobao, they don't have any inventory to sell.
Yeah.
So
really?
They're losing a lot of potential business because they can't. And also, deliveries are getting more difficult because of the quarantines in and out of certain cities. Oh. And both domestically, but also a lot of ports can't find the drivers to deliver the goods that are coming in, and a lot of inventory is backing up. So I'm not certain that's a winner. If especially a lot of foodstuffs are sitting on ports and they can't be delivered.
It did seem, though, that supermarkets and food chains and health products get prioritized. They say that, like, if you order a health product, it gets delivered quickly if it's within China, and food gets delivered quickly, but other items do take longer. I ordered some books for the kids, and it hasn't come. It's been a week. Usually, stuff in China goes really fast. It's like 2 days, 3 days. Stuff in China usually comes very fast.
Yeah, there's still are delivering. But...
Yeah. I've had same day delivery in China, which was amazing. I didn't expect that. It was like on one of the holiday ones, like 11/11, and there was, we have the same delivery for this. I'm like, okay.
There we go.
I ordered it at 10 a.m. and at 5, so it's crazy. Okay, so I have some articles about these topics. Okay, Mitchell?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Well, can you say something about online companies before we go ahead?
Well, we'll get to that one, but the online portals, like for gaming and for watching videos. So online games, whether it's like PUBG type games or other ones that take you out into a different place, they've gone up 60% for the Baidu index of searching, and because this is something you can spend time on if you're stuck at home and can't do anything else. But you have the internet and you have computers, and might also be making the internet slower, which is a frustration that Mitchell and I have been dealing with.
Which is what
Also, the Netflix companies of Youku and these other ones.
Careful now. The Netflix companies. Careful.
Sorry, they're not Netflix.
The video sharing.
The equivalent of streaming video services.
Video sharing.
Video
services. Yeah.
They're also doing well, and even my family, we bought a subscription for a month to see how it goes, and we watched quite a few movies. So it's they also benefit from these. Online health services. So whether it's
watching content.
But WeChat Health, or also like getting diagnoses from doctors online, or advice on certain illnesses that you've had, or medication, things like that. They have more of this online stuff now, and before this was hardly at all something that people look to. But as people really don't want to go to hospitals because they could encounter the virus, they are looking at these as
More likely
options
for, yeah.
especially for small issues. You know, if it's not a big issue and you can get the help online, why don't you get it help online?
Hopefully this becomes a tradition, because there's so little triage in Chinese hospitals. If people can avoid going there to stand in line, that would actually make the whole system more effective.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things because the way hospitals work, it's not like you give your insurance card and then everything gets charged to that at the end. Usually each time you get a check, you have to go and pay for it, or go and give your insurance card and they'll charge for that, and then you'll get another one and then charge for that. The only exception for that is if you're inpatient, but anything out of patient, you have to go and pay for things 2 or 3 times every visit to the hospital. So can be frustrating. Yeah, the other one is, I'm not sure if I put this down, but exercise apps are doing well. We have this one. Yeah, fitness apps. Yeah. So I also downloaded this Keep Trainer, and it's really useful. And you can see how the growth from like 79 just at the beginning of it up to 420 at the end of January. And this is just, and it's continued to be very strong in the downloads for fitness apps. Because also if you're stuck inside, the gyms are closed and the parks were closed for a long time. Now, XuanWu and a few other parks have opened up recently, but that was really frustrating. So where are you going to get your exercise if you can't go to the gym? The other one is enterprise collaboration apps. These are like the Slack stuff, but here it's called Ding Talk, WeChat Work, these types of ones where now people are having to work from home. And now people have to check, if you're working from home, I need to know that you're actually working. The training center I have, they just say, you check in at a certain time to say, I'm online. If you need something, contact me, just to show that you're there. And then you have classes or you have other things that you do. So these types of software and platform software is becoming bigger, more important now. Cross-border e-commerce pickup, but as you said, there's issues with getting drivers and stuff. The issues on moving between cities and provinces is causing that some of the supply chains to be slowed down and have issues. So, but I think a lot of people once they found they had trouble buying masks and other things from the stores, they were like, we must order from online. And then they ordered it from different other places, and then other places in the US I've been hearing are running out of masks because people are buying it up and then bringing it over.
Hardware stores in the middle of Ohio don't have any masks because of this thing in China. So I think, what's it, Daigo? Is that the resale tradition of overseas Chinese?
Taking it on a plane, yeah. But Daigo is less official. These ones, e-commerce ones, are the more big companies. Tmall is like Suning or Alibaba, and there's a few other ones that are cross-border, but with a big brand name. So we have worries. I wanted to mention some worries. There's been a recent uptick in the prison populations. and then the use of big data. I mentioned that Hubei prisons have 220 more coronavirus cases, and this province in Qingdao also had some virus issues. Don't think prisons are known for having great ventilation because they are prisons. So it's a
They
wide.
pack them in pretty tight. Yeah.
What do you think? Is it a bad sign for the prisons to be getting a lot of cases, or is it just they're like everywhere else? You know, if it affects society, it will affect the prisons.
Well, I mean, they're treating a lot of cities like prisons, and they're restricting. So, if the purpose of so much of what we're seeing now is to reinforce that the government is in control of the situation, the fact that the virus could get into a prison, I mean, it shows, number one, that they're really not in control of things, and maybe the prisons aren't as secure as we would think, because they don't have the quarantine facilities there. They certainly don't have what they need in terms of medical attention. And I think it's one of these situations where eventually everyone in that prison is going to get it. Because as someone pointed out, one of the problems with the cruise ships is that they do all the food preparation there on the ship.
Mm-hmm.
So that's in part of what causes so many people on a cruise ship to get it. And all the food that's prepared is probably been prepared by the prisoners in some of these prisons too. And so it's going to get around.
Yeah.
Because they really I don't think any of them plan for this kind of health concern inside a prison.
Yeah, they're probably not giving them masks. You would think.
Of course not.
Yeah, could be bad.
So, yeah. I think we're going to hear a lot more cases of these, prisons getting infections, and they're spreading basically throughout the whole system.
Yeah, well, at least they found it. The other thing, some provinces, Zhejiang, home of Alibaba, they're starting to use big data to scan people and then put the information into the accounts, into the data. And so now these apps where you can say, oh, do you have a case near you? Also, the telecom companies are helping people prove that their phone has been in a city for more than 14 days. So when people say, oh, self-quarantine, they're able to get this data from the telecom companies to say, yes, I have been in Nanjing for 14 days, and so I can go back to work, things like that. But, yeah, they're throwing all technology solutions at the problem. So I'm wondering if this might have other lasting effects that we can't see at the moment because they're just focused on the coronavirus. But imagine if it starts to spread to being just a little bit sick with the flu virus or something else like that, and then things can happen. And because of big data, they will be able to track you and find out you and everyone around you, and deal with you as a suspicious sick person. What do you think about the use of big data to solve these problems, Mitchell?
I mean, I think it's kind of frightening where governments are basically making the equivalence between the citizen and their phone. And are they going to be suspicious of anyone who doesn't carry their phone around with them? Is that going to be cause for concern if you don't always have your smartphone with you? So it's kind of a weird way to think that you can solve this problem, because you're assuming every single citizen
has a smartphone.
Is going to have a smartphone.
Yeah.
And I mean, like my wife alone, she's got 3 smartphones. So if she really wanted to, she could, she could find a workaround.
Yeah.
Or give me your phone and say, I want you to go this side of town because I'm going to sneak over here and I don't want my boss to know about it. But I think it's one of the ways in which, we've let, like you said, this big data just assume that if we got enough data, we can get the answers we want. And it's just so obvious. There are just ways to undermine it, and especially if it's going to restrict people in their movements.
Yeah.
And it's maybe a short time. I mean, we've already seen this example of, this is a long story, but using Google Maps to
cause a traffic jam by pulling.
Well,
German guy pulled around the block.
Uber was pulling that trick so they could make it seem like there were more drivers on the road than there were at any one time. But also, in the port of Shanghai, they were creating ghost ships to make it appear that ships weren't doing the dredging that they weren't supposed to be doing.
Oh.
So the idea that the big data, that more data is always reliable and useful, I think too many people have bought into it. It's just another set of numbers that can be manipulated
in a positive or negative way, kind of thing.
Exploited. Yeah. And over-reliance on it, when really what you want is to build a trust in a society that if people say they're going to quarantine themselves, you don't have to, weld their door shut because you don't trust them that they're going to break quarantine.
Yeah, this use of the little cards that for going into the residential areas is also, I think, a sign of lack of trust a bit, saying, gotta protect us. You can't trust that people will, stick to the areas and everything else. We'll see. Maybe good, maybe bad, may not be. Let's just check. I think, is that it? Also, the links of all the stuff that we cited here, feel free to check them out. We wanted to make sure that whatever topic we brought up, we had the citation given. So I think that's a good time to wrap it up. Any predictions on when Wuhan will stop being closed off and quarantined, Mitchell?
I think it's going to be a seasonal change. I think that the weather has to change. Things are going to have to get a lot warmer. I think it's warmer weather and drier weather. Is that what it is? That makes the virus transmission less likely. But I'm seeing more and more reports that the incubation time and the time that someone can still transmit the virus is getting longer and longer. So I think for Wuhan, it's going to be at least another 4 or 5 months.
Wow. I think just because I was here with SARS, and it started to wrap up around May and June. So I'd say like end of May, beginning of June would be my estimate.
But SARS was tiny compared to this.
But it was the same type of virus, and it also was greatly affected by the weather that could be affected by this. And they're being very proactive about it.
Of course.
I feel like they have more ways of protecting it than they did when SARS happened. With SARS, it was just the temperature check, almost always, and then you would just quarantine. Yeah. People didn't know if you had the fever for the SARS or for the flu, but
Yeah, and I mean, what was the total number of patients outside of China who had been diagnosed with SARS.
I can't
think
remember, but it wasn't much. It was,
Yeah.
it was like, oh, but there were
But
pockets.
I think it was only in the dozens.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's it for now. Please leave the comments below and subscribe to our channel if you have time. Okay. See you. See you next time.
Ciao. Take care.
To worry, 'cause there's nothing